Welcome to episode 4, part 2 of the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. This is the interview with Ross Flanagan, host of My Love of Golf and a few other bits and pieces. I hope you enjoy the interview. Take a listen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, look, I mentioned that on the podcast I was going to have special guest Ross Flanagan. Now, Ross is the guy who, if you're a bit of a podcast listener, as I said in my introduction to the episode, Ross is a podcaster with the My Love of Golf podcast, and he's also joins on another podcast as a co-host for the Mental Mastery podcast with Jamie Glazier. Now, Roscoe's kind enough to join us, and I've got Ross on the line. He's sort of dialed in, as it was. G'day, Ross. Welcome.
G'day, Steve. How are you, buddy? Thanks for having me on. We're looking forward to catching up with you. Looking good there. We're doing this via Zoom, this great technology that I think we've all started using, and it's good to be able to see your smiling face there, buddy. I do appreciate your time.
We are. Thank you, mate. No, thank you very much. It's this medium of doing a video and being able to record at the same time is pretty cool. It's and just for framing for everyone who's listening in, you've got this really cool backdrop you've sorted out on the Zoom video. Where is that, mate? That looks really awesome.
Yeah, it's one of two or three actual go-to backdrops for me. But this one is North Berwick, one of my favourite golf courses on the planet. I said to someone the other day, I was on their podcast, which hasn't come out yet, but that I said, if you could drop me anywhere and I would never play another golf course in my life, it would be North Berwick. So I use that one as my backdrop sometimes. The other one, obviously, Peninsula Kingswood, another home track of mine. So, yeah, it's North Berwick. It's the first green looking over the second fairway. Beautiful place.
No, that's awesome, mate. It's that's really cool. I do like it. It's just a cool effect that you can do, and these are all the things that people are learning to do differently with the Zoom and with videos and podcasts, and yeah, just another element, mate. It's awesome. So, look, mate, I'll get started. We'll fire into it. This time you're the interviewee, which is different a little bit for you.
I know, mate. It's nice. It's good to be on the other end. It's usually me having to do all the hard work, asking the questions and racking my brain and, directing where I go and what do I say now and not all that sort of stuff. And yeah. And it's nice to be on the other end. I feel quite relaxed. So it's good. The pressure's all on you, buddy.
Mate. Like I said, I thank you for coming on and really looking forward to sort of chatting about you and learning a little bit about you and the passion behind you and golf. So, mate, look, for those that don't know you, who's Ross Flanagan? And sort of because this is golf and I'm a big fan of golf and the people in it and all the different aspects of golf. How did you first get into golf? What got you into the great game?
Well, like many of us, that started golf as a child, I was influenced to play golf by my dad. My dad and mum both immigrated to Australia from Scotland. My dad came here to play semi-professional football up in the Hunter Valley, and being a Scotsman, one of his pastimes was golf. So, like a lot of the sporting code people that and you see now, when they weren't playing football, soccer football or working, the other Scotsmen that were in the team would go and have a game of golf. So, he was a golfer, or he is a golfer, and he introduced me to the game of golf at Cessnock Golf Club. I remember as a child, mum not being a passionate golfer, and, when I got the opportunity to go to golf with dad, that was her little break. So she was happy to see me go off and follow dad around on the golf course. I wasn't really playing too much, but he would take me out, and I remember sitting on his buggy, and that just transpired into me being a golfer. One day I remember coming home and there was a little set of golf clubs there for my birthday, and the age of the golf clubs, they weren't hickories, but they weren't much newer than hickories, let's put it that way. A little half set, little 5, 7 and a sort of mashy spoony type 9-iron thing, an old wood and a little blue bag, the little types of blue bags that vinyl bags that oval shape that you find in op shops now. That I wish I still had it, but that was my first golf kit, mate. And
mate, they're antiques, that sort of thing. Yeah. People pay a fortune for that stuff now.
I'm a pretty old fella, mate, so that's it was a while ago. But yeah, that Dad got me into golf, and then when my brother came along, there's a few years difference to us. He's 7 years younger than me. He got into golf, and then Mum eventually got into golf, and we became a golfing family. Dad became the president of the golf club for a stint there. So we were pretty involved in golf in the local community up there in the Hunter Valley at Cessnock, which is, my hometown, but Melbourne's my hometown now and has been for, 20 odd years now. So, yeah, that's my background, how I got into golf. And, I just played as a junior. We had a very good junior section at Cessnock Golf Club. It was led by a man who I still hold in the highest regards, John Linnetson and his family. Now, John Linnetson, if you've played golf as a junior in and around Cessnock in the 80s and 90s, John Linnetson is a name that doesn't necessarily always come to mind quickly, but he was one of the guys that really made that Jack Newton Junior Golf Foundation annual tournament a big thing. So, John Linnetson and his family, Ray and his wife and Dale, his daughter, who's my age, who now lives in Melbourne, who was a very, very good golfer herself. That family just put junior golf on the map for me and a whole host of other kids in the town, and it was just our thing to do. So that was really influential, as me being a golfer as a kid, and then I gave up.
Just as you grew up, I suppose. Sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah, it was. I was lucky in that junior golf environment, Steve, to be around and be exposed to junior golfers at the highest level. As I said, that Jack Newton Sub-Junior Classic that we hosted in Cessnock every year, it was, I'm not sure of its status now, to be fair, but it was at the time the biggest junior golf tournament in Australia. And we would host all of the teams from all of the states, even internationally, in the end of it there. So we were hanging around, people like Mark Hensby, Gabriel Hertzstedt, who's used to come and stay at my place, two-time PGA Tour winner, a whole host of guys that used to, play at the highest level. And I guess I had visions of playing golf at the highest level, but I wasn't quite good enough, and I recognised that. And I guess when I recognised that, I had the opportunity to go and do a traineeship. The pro at the golf club offered me the chance to leave school and go and work in his shop. And then when I turned 17, do a traineeship, but I stayed at school. And in staying at school to do year 11 and 12, I started to get involved in all the other things that come around when you get to that age, Steve, like girls. Playing golf was all of a sudden not cool anymore to me. So I started playing rugby league, and I started playing water polo and, a whole heap of other stuff, drinking VB cans, and, the rest is history, mate, riding motorbikes. And
yeah, that's it. And you explore as you become a young adult. You're looking at, like you said, I think sometimes it does become uncool, for want of a better way of saying it, in different parts of the country. If it's not even though Cessnock, like you talked about, the junior development side of things then, and I remember when I was young in the Blue Mountains, we had a big drive of juniors and that. But once I don't know, that adolescence and early sort of adulthood, you're looking at different things and all sorts of other things crowd your mind. So you're sort of growing and exploring.
I scored 2 tries playing a rugby league match in front of the school, Steve, and that I liked that. And I thought I was going to be a rugby league player for the Manly Warringah Seagulls, which we share a common interest in.
We do, yes.
And once again, I was kidding myself, but that was a fleeting moment. So, but once I finished school, Steve, I moved to Sydney for work. I wasn't going to be a coal miner. I wasn't going to follow my dad into the wine industry. So I moved to Sydney for work. Then I started riding motorcycles, because that was the most economical and easy form of transport for me. That's all I could afford. And that then led me into riding bikes, having an interest in motorcycles. Obviously, in Cessnock's a big motorcycle area as well, so they were always around. Started riding bikes, and then I got a job in the motorcycle industry, and that really then took me on another pathway. Golf just became a pastime, which I still had the ability to do, and we still played golf occasionally, not very often. But that took me into an automotive industry career for 20-odd years. So golf then was just a pastime. I had a career in the motorcycle industry and then the car industry. I worked for Mercedes-Benz for 12 years, which was a great experience. I worked with Nissan starting the Infinity car brand here in Australia. That was a great experience.
Wow.
But through that time, I had a lot of good mentors and a lot of good training, a lot of good experience, saw the world. It was awesome. I really loved it. Like, how could you not love working for a couple of the biggest car brands in the world?
Yeah, for sure.
But I started playing golf again. So you asked me how I got started. I'm sort of getting into how I got into it now. But I started playing golf again as an adult when I moved down to where I am now in Mount Eliza, which is the top end of the Mornington Peninsula. And I just wanted a pastime. I wanted to reconnect with some adults and play a bit of sport and be active and just do something on the weekend. And I joined down at Mornington Golf Club, which is just down the road. And that really rekindled my addiction for the game of golf. I reignited that passion, like hitting long bombs off the first tee at Mornington, trying to drive the green, became addictive. And I just became, a bit of a figure, not a figure, but one of the members at the club and playing there and playing pennant for Mornington. And that rekindled my addiction for golf. And then the business side of thing kicked in, and that's where I sort of find myself now.
Yeah, okay. And like you said, I was sort of going to get to where you are now. You're a retail golf business owner, and you're in that retail space. That was sort of the kind of steps. Did you always want to get into the business side of golf, or was that something that was an opportunity for you?
Yeah, it was an opportunity, and what I always wanted to do was a couple of things. I wanted to be somewhat self-employed, having worked for big corporations and at various levels with various degrees of success. I had wanted to work for myself. And then I wanted to do golf. So I wanted to play more golf and be around golf all the time. That's how much the addiction took over. Mercedes-Benz, for example, like I was known as the golf guy. I'd go into a Mercedes-Benz dealership to do business and end up talking about golf for half an hour. And that's how they sort of viewed me. I thought, there's something in this. I've got to scratch this itch. And one day, a conversation on the putting green at Peninsula Kingswood with my now business partner just started a process of joining the Drummond Golf Network as a franchisee, as an owner operator of one of their franchises, and that was nearly 6 years ago, and really haven't looked back since. I get like I've always my motto has always been to work in areas where my passion's been the strongest.
Yep.
And if you look back at those areas that I spoke about before, motorcycles. I love motorcycles. I love riding, the freedom of riding motorcycles. It was just a really great time, 8 or 9 years working all around the country for Suzuki. I wanted to get into the car industry. Well, I went and worked for Mercedes-Benz for 12 years. I loved those cars. I was fascinated by Mercedes-Benz because my dad used to drive Bruce Tyrrell's Mercedes-Benz home occasionally, and he showed me the windows that would go up and down by themselves, like press the button here, Ross, and the window would go up. Doors that you couldn't slam. And I just got fascinated by Mercedes-Benz, so I got a job with Mercedes-Benz. And then I got fascinated by business. That's when we started the Infinity brand. And then I wanted my own business. So, and golf was the thing. So I've always been in sort of an area that I'm passionate about. And, and that's led me to, sitting here, on a podcast with you, being in the golf industry, wanting to do something that contributes to that landscape. I'm not a great mathematician, but I'm a reasonable communicator. So I thought I'd just, try my hand at this podcasting game, and I'm lucky enough to get access and get exposure to some great products, some great people, and maybe the ability to share and tell a story. And I just thought I'd turn my hand to that, mate, and start the My Love of Golf podcast. I started it with my son. It was fairly agricultural when we started, a little recorder, and he would help with all of the mixing. He's a student, and that was a great thing for us to do together. And here we are now. I've got a expensive microphone and a little mixing desk. You can hear the music playing underneath, hopefully. And I'm still learning, mate. I'm still learning.
Oh, mate, it's the world of podcasting is very intriguing, and like you said, once you get into it. So, and I want to touch on a few things there. And I've been to your shop. You're in the Melbourne City. Your Drummond Golf in the Melbourne City there.
Yeah.
And I think I'm curious to pick your brains about retail golf a little bit, because I remember my exposure as a kid in retail golf in the Blue Mountains, a bit like you, country, and all I knew was Pro Shop. Pro Shop was it. If you wanted anything, you would go to the Pro Shop at your local club or a club nearby or something, and someone would know a pro somewhere who had a shop with this type of gear or that type of gear, or there was trade, a demo day with a brand or something. And there was like, I know Drummond has been around for a little while, and there's a couple of other brands in Australia that have got a name for quite a number of years. But now I feel that there's really this if you want something golf, because the world's smaller with the internet and certainly retail side of things as well. If you want something golf, it's nearly you kind of first think, where's a big retail golf shop? It's almost like walking into a Bunnings, some of these places for golf. There's so much to pick from. And I'll touch on yours a little bit because I can, and that's, you've got things like simulators now in shops, and people can come and play golf. They can bring their clubs, I think, and sort of practice themselves, or they can play with friends. They can see what is available at their fingertips. It's I'll call it Bunnings. It really fascinates me from a retail sense. What's around and how immersive golf retail has become.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for the other brands because, I've not really experienced them
Sure.
In the last time, but I can speak at length about, what Drum & Golf's contribution towards golf is in Australia. And, it's more than just the retail landscape. Drum & Golf, really do see themselves as a brand that contributes to the golf space in Australia. They partner with Golf Australia. Most of the events, the pro events you see, there's some level of sponsorship and complementary associations that are brought about by Drum & Golf. So they really do contribute to the broader landscape. But as a retail organisation, they're obviously and clearly the biggest off-course retail organisation in Australia. They are all owner-operated stores. So I think I sometimes read on some forums and whatever that people think that Drum & Golf is this massive corporation and they own everything and all the money, all that sort of stuff. Everyone that is in a store as a franchisee, has some skin in the game in terms of financial investment. So they've got a real interest in, the operation of that business. And the businesses are growing. The days of small shops being everywhere, Drum & Golf or not Drum & Golf, they're really hard to operate. They're big businesses and they're hard to operate. There's a lot of stock, there's a lot of brands, there's a lot of things that you have to do, know, and represent. It makes them reasonably complex in the golf space. So they do have everything. They do represent pretty much 99% of all the brands, and but the real focus is, Steve, is the customer experience. At the center of every Drum & Golf store is the customer and the experience that we provide around that. And the best way to provide an experience for a customer is to have a great range of products, have great pricing, and then have a great facility that people can, really see as a one-stop shop. So you talk about simulators there. So a lot of maybe 20 stores now will have full swing golf simulators installed inside as a big swing golf franchise. So that's a business in a business. That's an entertainment venue which sits alongside Drum & Golf. So you can go and play golf, practice golf, get a lesson. So you really can do everything that you can almost foreseeably do at a golf course. You can do in a big swing golf venue. You can play 18 holes of golf at Pebble Beach. You can get a golf lesson. You can practice on the range. You can practice your chipping. You can have a beer. You can have a party. You can do all of those sorts of things.
Unbelievable.
So that really does add to the customer experience section, especially in this time where we're time poor. COVID time is going to put another dimension when we open the stores back up for big swing golf again. That'll add another dimension for people wanting to do golf safely and do it at a time that's convenient to them. Golf's pretty busy at the moment, so it's hard to get a tee time. So big swing golf, and then the store. You mentioned the internet. People always ask me, "Oh, how do you find the internet? How do you find the internet?" And the internet's a thing, in all of our lives, in everything that we do. Whether you're buying a car, whether you're buying a house, whether you're buying a golf club or anything, the internet is a thing. But the thing about golf, it's tactile, right? You want to see it, you want to touch it, you want to have a hit of it, you want to have an experience with it. And I see a lot of people weekly that have bought golf clubs online that they haven't been fitted for. They didn't perform the way that they did, trading them in, selling them and all that sort of thing, and then coming and going, I should have come here and got fitted. I should have come here and tested it out. And we've got, in my store at least, we've got hundreds of demo heads and shafts and all of that sort of thing that you can try. And that's part of the experience. And, when we mention price, that's another part of the experience. Drum & Golf have got a policy, and this isn't a Drum & Golf thing. This is just telling you, answering your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've got a lowest price guarantee. So if there's anything online that you see, they've got a policy in place, like a Dan Murphy's. They've researched Dan Murphy's. You look at Dan Murphy's, and you don't necessarily always see that as the cheapest store. It doesn't have a positioning or a perception as the cheap store, but they have a lowest price guarantee. Bunnings has a lowest price guarantee. Drum & Golf has a lowest price guarantee. So that's what retail is, in the snapshot. If that paints the picture in my mind, I love it. I love, talking to people. I love helping people, and that's my main modus operandi, is talking to people about golf and helping people. And I get the opportunity to do that. In the absence of being able to be a golf pro and be a coach, which is probably what I would have liked to have been, I don't do lessons, of course, but I get to talk to people about golf and therefore help them. So I really enjoy that. Yeah,
mate. And like I said, I find the retail side of it now quite interesting. Like I said, there's so many different parts and components to. It's an experience now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I think there's certainly some people out there that think retail's not quite the right angle for them to go and research their stuff. They still like to go to their local pro or their pro shop, and that's good. Everything has a place in golf, and I think the retail side of it has really turned its way around to become a place to go to where it is informative. It is a good place to really understand what's out there, learn about what equipment there is, and you can enjoy yourself there as well. I've been to Topgolf on the Gold Coast, and that's an entertainment venue. And like you said, the Big Swing Golf is a component that's available in some stores, and you can entertain yourself and your friends there just the same. And it's just anything that gets, for me, I'm big on golf and getting people engaged in the sport. And if there's anything that, and anywhere in the space that does that well and can improve people's experience, I'm all for it. I just think it's a great thing. If you can go shopping for a golf club and it's pouring rain outside and it's 7 o'clock at night because you did a late shift or something, you can go and try the club. And you can try it up against your own stuff. And it's inside. You don't need to worry about daylight, weather, whatever. I think all these things are good. And I think seeing yourself and getting to know you as a person, and like you said, you like talking to people and you engage with people. I think it's a really good thing as a customer as well, because you see that passion. I walked into your store and it's not just you, it's your staff. And I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable immediately, and I wanted to say I'm not a big person that goes into retail shops to go shopping for golf stuff. I've got my set. I've had it for a while. I probably should update it. It's getting very old now. But when I walked into your store, I felt like I'd just gone to a new golf course I hadn't seen before. That's sort of kind of the feeling I got. And there was people that loved the game and wanted to talk to me about it and show me around the shop and the equipment. And I just think that's all good things. I think it's really good. And I'll talk about what you've got down there in Melbourne, because I think it's on the north side of the city. Is that right? Just on the north side? I don't know Melbourne that well.
Yeah, well, I think there are 9 or 10 stores in Melbourne. In around the suburbs, but the Drum and Golf Melbourne store is in the CBD in Franklin Street, which is up near the Queen Vic Market. If most people can orient themselves towards Queen Vic Market, up that way. So yeah, the north side. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So no, look, I just think what you've got's great, and I think being part of that improved and better experience for people in retail golf, I think is a great thing. And I just think, mate, I love seeing that part of it. And I think for you, what I see in you is your passion comes out through the retail side, but you get a really good cross section of golf because you're a member of Peninsula Kingswood, as you said, in Melbourne, and you're in the retail space and you do the podcast. You get to really experience a lot of opinions on people. You get a good cross section of the golfscape, the golf landscape. How do you sort of take all that on? Do you enjoy that side of it? Like you said, you like talking to people, the podcast, all that sort of thing. Do you enjoy seeing all the different angles that people talk about and where they come from?
Oh, I love it because it's how you learn. Like it's how you're able to gain knowledge, then which allows you then to contribute to the landscape. Like I see a lot of new golfers, so I get a good understanding of how they view the game, how they perceive the barriers to entry to the game, what they enjoy about the game. So I get a really good understanding there. So I can use that as knowledge to then help overcome those challenges. When someone comes in and says, I'm not sure about golf as a game or how I do it, I can advise them pretty accurately on how to do it and using other people's knowledge to then reframe that to help them be comfortable, basically, in terms of that. At the higher end, getting access to the reps and the brands and getting some information about the products and how they work and what makes a sim driver versus a Maverick driver versus a Speed Zone, etc. I find that really interesting from a technical side. Going back to my Mercedes-Benz cars, you don't have an interest or a passion in Mercedes-Benz without having some, desire to understand how they work and operate. And I use that in the golfing sense and to be able to pass that information on. And I still people people have an understanding of brands and understanding of golf club. It's still the minority of people that really sort of understand how a lot of the technology works. So just being able to peel off one or two bits of information about a golf club and how that's designed to help someone or improve their game, and then show them and demonstrate that, that is a massive thing for me. Makes me smile when I see someone, gain some meterage or hit the ball a little bit straighter, and understand why their older club might not be helping them be better, and showing them, you've got to make an investment here and it's a lot of money, I get that, but it's going to help your game. And that's important because, people like improving in golf. People like doing golf and being better at it, and equipment is undeniably a part of that for many people. Some people, can play with 30, 40-year-old clubs and still play off scratch and do all that sort of thing, and that's fine. But a lot of people in their evolution, and there's a big chunk of people that aren't, 4 or less handicappers. They're the 1%ers. The big chunk of people are 15 to 35 handicap, and it's a great place to be able to help people like that be better at golf and understand golf a bit better, and even little things for me, like with the podcast and having access to courses and traveling and different environments, and being able to articulate that and help people if they come in saying, "Oh, we're going to Scotland, we're not sure where to go," and my staff will just go, "Oh, just go and talk to him. Just go over there. He's the one you want to talk to," and that doesn't cost anything. Like you come in and get that information. People walk out without buying something in that case, and they've got all this information, and they walk out going, "Oh, wow." They don't expect to get something like that. So that's what I love doing. I love being able to articulate. And I haven't travelled too extensively for golf, but certainly to Ireland, certainly to Scotland, and certainly as a 15-year-old to America to play golf. So I can talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome. I love the passion that oozes out of you about helping people in the game in any way that you can, like you said, whether it's working out where's a place to go and play in another country through your experience or equipment, or just helping them out and meeting new people, and go and catch up with so-and-so and they'll show you around the place. So
I had good training.
Really good.
It just comes from good training, mate. It just comes from good training. Like it didn't obviously happen, walking into a Drummond store and giving good service. Sure. That's part of their model. That's a given. But, it's probably not, everyone has their own customer experiences in all businesses, and, you hear the positives and the negatives. But for me, it just comes with good training, like working for a brand like Mercedes-Benz. You don't sell cars without having good customer service. So I was involved in that environment with Mercedes-Benz for, 3 or 4 years as part of my role. My dad, I watched my dad. My dad was a massive influence on how to talk to people, how to treat people. I worked alongside my dad at Tyrrell's there for 3 or 4 years on a Saturday, doing the winery tour. So I was a 17-year-old taking groups of 20 people around the winery, doing winery tours. And I only knew how to do that because I watched my dad do it. So he taught me how to talk to people and how to be nice to people and what customer service is all about. So I just do that, mate. I just do what I got told by my mentors.
Yeah, and you've no doubt had some great ones along the way, and certainly no bigger by the sounds than your own father, which is wonderful. It's good. You come from those. Your life's journey has been through a number of different industries and through different workplaces, starting off with wines and even younger days in golf, and some of your connections. And I know that you mentioned with the Jack Newton days and that sort of stuff, and being involved with the club at Cessnock and all those things. They all add up to what you are. I suppose we're all a product of our own environment at the end of the day. And if you're open-minded and I suppose I'll say it cluey enough to pick up on those things and take those learning points in life, then you get to a point where you feel good. I love where I can do it in what I do, landscape gardening and golf and horticulture. I love helping people out. And I get a bit of a kick out of it. And it sounds like, exactly that. You get a kick out of helping people with your knowledge and
But you're doing a great thing. You're turning your passion into providing information and entertainment for people who, want to learn about your space. It's sort of like my analogy with the equipment. People know a little bit about equipment, and when you can tell them more about the equipment and then they understand more and understand the benefits and the reasons, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what you're doing. You understand, you're an expert in your field of greenkeeping and the golf course environment and everything that makes a golf course what some of us take for granted, right? We just turn up, pay our membership, pay our fees, rock on. You know, hopefully the greens are great, the fairways are great, go away, shoot whatever you shoot and see you later. But you and I know because I watched my brother do it as a career for, you know, however many years. I know you well enough now to know how you see the golf course and the built environment. You're an expert in that space, and people like me want to know more. People like my customers want to know more. And when they know more, they go, oh, right. You know what happens then? They respect the place a little bit more. They fill another divot in. They pop up another hole, and they learn. And when you learn about golf, you want to be more engaged with it. Simple.
Yeah, no, I do agree with it, and there's so many parts to it, and you know, that's part of this conversation is anyone listening hopefully will learn more and more as well. So, and that's a good thing, mate. I want to move to the podcast, and you mentioned it it was something that you and your son started together with. Tell me how what was the concept behind, I suppose, of all the different mediums, there's podcasts, which is, I'm going to say it's internet radio, for want of dumbing it down a little bit. And I don't mean that in a harsh way, because I love listening to them, and obviously I love doing them as well. But you got into it with your son. Tell us a little bit about the why podcasts in the way that you're doing it.
Well, I can answer that. My son, who helped me and still helps me absolutely very much, but he helped me more so in the early days. I was trying to influence him as much as anything. He had started his uni career. He'd finished high school. He was going to uni to do media communications. He is a soccer football fanatic, and that's his niche. That's his passion. He had got some little, intern roles in some football media space. So I was just trying to be a good mentor to him, like my dad was to me. You know, he's come and gone between two houses for most of his life, so, you know, we don't see each other every day. So I want to try and make the best of it. And I just felt that as a way that maybe we could do this podcasting concept, and he could help me, and that would give us something to work towards, and it was a common interest. So that was probably one of the key motivations. The other thing is, you know, I live in top end of the Mornington Peninsula. Obviously, businesses in the city, you know, 5 and 6 days a week at the time. I'm not 6 days a week anymore. Sometimes 5, mostly 4. But in and out of the city, 2 hours in a car. I just remember getting to the stage where I was listening to the radio that was on, and I won't say who I was listening to because I changed it around a bit, but traffic, time, I was getting so frustrated. It was bringing me down. It was a terrible way to start my day. Yeah. And I rediscovered listening to podcasts. I dabbled in it years ago when they first came out, and I sort of pushed it aside, and then I started listening to them again. I started listening to some entrepreneurial ones, some golf ones, and a whole heap of different ones, and I got to the end of it, and I didn't want to get out of the car. I couldn't wait to get into the car and spend 2 hours in it in the morning, because I got to listen to this great information. And that's, I guess, the other reason why I thought, well, the golf space there's all the big guys. I'm never going to compete with the big guys, but I know these great people. And I thought maybe I can just have conversations with these great people who love golf but aren't necessarily golf pros.
Yep.
And the concept of my love of golf, it's not about me. You know, if I ask you, tell me about your love of golf, I would hope that you would answer, well, my love of golf, Ross, is, and that was sort of the answer, the reason behind the name. It's not my love of golf. My love of golf is understanding your love of golf. So that was, I guess, the reason for the name and the reason for the podcast. And I just started with a very good friend of mine who's still a great friend, Dennis Armfield from the Carlton Footy Club. He had just transitioned out of playing professional football, Aussie rules, and he agreed to come on as my first guest.
Yeah, wow.
So he gave me a go, told me his story. We sat down at his place of work. I had a couple of recorders and a little microphone, and off we went. And that was the start of it. And then I've had some other great guests along the journey. You know, a couple other footballers, Zach Tui, who's a mate of mine, the Irish player for Geelong. He gave me a crack. I had a couple of mates. I met a monster truck driver, Justin Sipes, who I knew from motocross. You know, I knew Justin and Ryan Sipes from the motocross days, and you know he had raced alongside Chad Reed, who was from the Hunter Valley, and you know I knew Chad from my motorcycle days, not as a kid, and I said, "Oh, you love golf? You're in town driving a monster truck." He's from Kentucky. He said, "Yeah, I am." I said, "Can we talk to golf with me for half an hour?" "Yeah, no worries." So that was, and it just went like that, mate. And
yeah, that's cool. I think the podcast is great. It's in my head, and I haven't said this to you before, and I keep trying to think of. I love the format. I love the interviewing. I love the people that you talk to and all that sort of stuff. In my head, I call you the Mike Willesee of golf. Yeah. Now, for those that don't know, Mike Willesee is a great Australian journalist, former Australian journalist. He's no longer with us, sadly, but he's always back in the day in the 90s, and I remember him for interviewing amazing characters and personalities, and he was done This Is Your Life and all that sort of stuff. And every time I sit down to listen to, or I'm driving and listening to the My Love of Golf podcast, I'm like, for some reason, I picture you, Roscoe, just sitting back in the chair, just interviewing someone behind. I know you do it on the mic, and I know they're not always in the studio with you, but I got Roscoe's the Mike Willesee of golf podcasting, golf interviewing. That's how I see it.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you very much. Well, you know what? Just the fact that I know that you listen, and that's a compliment enough. And for me, I sit here and really honestly think that no one listens. It's just me talking. I put it out into the interwebs, and I know people listen to it, but I don't think that anyone listens to it, or why would they have an interest? But they do. And that's knowing that alone is enough to make me want to keep improving and doing it better. I think if you listen to the early podcasts, you see how I've, I guess, improved and grown. Some of the technology helps that. Having a microphone makes you sound better and things like that. I've really had to work hard at not doing the ums and the ahs and that sort of thing, and you just
that is difficult in itself.
And you learn that, and obviously sometimes you can edit things like that out. My early podcast I didn't edit at all, and then I realised I probably need to start, taking some of the gaps out and changing some of the ums. And the Scots, we have this very big thing for saying It's a very Celtic thing, and I say that a lot, So really try hard to work on that. But I appreciate that, Steve. I love talking to people about their golf, but I also love talking to them about what they do. And I'm trying harder to incorporate, I guess, somewhat messages in the tone of the podcast. Like, I had a bit of a thing with a podcast guru who lives around the corner from me, and we had a bit of a training session. He said, entertainment or information, people have to be taking away some value out of it. So I really try and have those two themes running through, like the Andy Proudman one. I really wanted to talk to him about his own podcast, not so much about me and my golf. He's massive, and I was blown away when he said, yes, I will come on your podcast, Ross. I couldn't believe it. I was nervous as anything. But I just wanted to talk to him about his podcast, because I listened to his own. It's called Live Like a Legend. Just a Monday, he puts it out Monday morning. It's a short, sharp 20 minutes, just about the things that he's working on as a personal development side. And I just love listening to him. And we talked about that. And I think people got a lot of value out of hearing Andy's take on some of the development topics that he talks about. So that was a theme. In the COVID period, I had Scott Jamieson, the leader of the Melbourne City Football Club. We talked about leadership. We talked about how he influences the young boys around the team. We talked about a bit of golf and a bit of fun, and his mate Luke Bratton, who's a mate, and we talked about all of that. That was good. Talked about Stuart Kerr and his story. So inspirational. Yeah. I just like talking to people. As you can probably tell, I'm rambling on. I'd talk to you for an hour, mate, 2 hours. I'd talk to you for as long as as we could.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, I love that side of your podcast. I think it's really good. And I got into podcasting because, look, my wife does it. And a quick plug to her. She's Pink Cow Social. My wife, Bree, she's been doing it for a little while now, a little podcast with women in business and that sort of thing. And I used to listen to her record, and she was, always doing this. And the podcasting thing, it was really enjoyable interviewing, and I like listening to that as well. And she helps people with their social media side of things. But once I started listening to yours, I was like, wow, that's a cool golf podcast. And mine is quite different, I suppose, to a certain extent. It's more about how golf and presentation and the landscape of golf courses, how it affects your golf. But I'll interview people along the way, hopefully like yourself, about your passion of golf. But I've got to be honest, you, mate, and you don't know this, but you really got me to think about doing the podcast, because I'd heard yours and I really enjoyed it and I liked it. And I thought, you know what? I wonder how difficult it is to do. And there's certainly a bit of nous to it. But, listening to yours really got me the drive to do the golf side of it. And I picked up a lot of cues from my wife and what she's done. But the inspiration behind actually getting off my backside and doing a golf one was from you. So there you go, mate. I'll be honest, straight up.
I appreciate that, mate. I really do. And, that if I didn't hit the record button ever again, and had that as my final parting thought, that would be in a podcasting sense, of course, not in a life sense. That would be great, mate, because I appreciate that, and that's great. I love knowing that. And I had, funnily enough, you say that, and it makes me think back. I can remember I had an influence somewhat similar, and not in a golfing sense. There's a young chap who is no longer a professional footballer, but he's a very funny character. It's called Dylan Buckley. Now, Dylan Buckley was a young son of a Carlton legend, came into play at Carlton Footy Club, and I met him at the golf shop, helped the boys with some golf clubs. He was one of them. Just a great young kid. And one day he posted on his Instagram a picture of a Zoom recorder, a Zoom Handy H5, which is one of the things that I had. And it just looked like this weird contraption. And I remember messaging him saying, "What's that deal?" He says, "Oh, it's a recorder and I'm going to start a podcast." And right. And I was at Foster. I was up at Foster, staying in Foster a couple of years ago. And I remember this message exchange with him. And I was listening to some podcasts on the drive, and I was with my wife, and I said, "I'm going to start this podcast thing. If Dylan Buckley's starting a podcast, this young fella who, I didn't credit that he would, he's a talented guy, but I didn't think that he would do that. I thought if he can start a podcast, so can I." And I messaged him back and say, "Mate, thanks very much, because you helped inspire me to want to do that." So Dylan Buckley, who's now one of the, his Dylan Friends, it's called. He interviews guys, and he's quite funny. It's one of the biggest in the sports category. He's gone from strength to strength. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, very, very good. Good, another good part of the My Love of Golf podcast. Now begin. Now, mate, you touched on some of the personalities that you've been able to interview along the way, and one of your more recent ones was a big name in, I suppose, the golf internet media side of it, was Eric Anders Lang, and I've listened to that podcast. He's a really interesting personality. I love seeing his stuff and listening to. I really enjoyed your interview with him. What were your feelings when Eric said yes to come onto the podcast? And yep, I'll be part of it. Come on, let's go. Let's talk, Ross.
I couldn't believe it. Frankly, I couldn't believe it. I just asked Andy Proudman, and to go back to Andy Proudman, because it led me on to asking Eric. And I would have wanted to interview Eric 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, because I've been following his journey and his progression in the ranks, and I just really, like you said, I'm a fan of his work. I'm a fanboy. But it was Andy Proudman that one day he put a podcast out, and he said the message was, "If you don't ask, you don't get." And I went, "You know what, Ross? As many guests as I've had, I'm always nervous about asking. It's not something that comes natural to me." And I just put probably more barriers in front of my mindset about asking than just asking. So I went to Andy and said, "Andy, I listen to your podcast. Thanks very much. You said if you don't ask, you don't get. So I'm going to ask you, can you come on my podcast?" And he went, "No worries, Ross. No problems." So that was that one. And then after talking to Stu Kerr, who's Eric's best mate, I didn't talk to Stu about it. But then I just asked Eric, and I said, "Eric, this is what I think. This is what I want to talk about. What do you think?" He went, "Yeah, okay, I've got some time. Let's do it on this day." Oh, wow. And I knew, obviously I knew that it was going to be, a fairly popular, and desirable person to talk to. And it was just a great conversation because I know his content so, reasonably well. He was able to just talk about the areas of interest that are important to him, the Random Golf Club, his own project in the Be the Ball movie, which will come out in the future, and just some of the other work that he's done. The video that he made with the Royal and Ancient, to think about at a greater level the changing landscape of golf media, and the traditional paid advertising model and all of that sort of stuff, and it's all changing. And it's changing because of people like Eric, and how they can reach people. And then at the lower level, people like you and people like me that can reach another load of people. So it's all changing. And to see that the RNA went to Eric and said, "Can you help us make a video about the Open?"
Yeah.
It's Eric Anders Lang, who's just a contemporary golf content creator, but the RNA going to him. That shows the level of influence that he's got. And it also, to me, showed that the RNA are serious about changing, serious about broadening their appeal. And if you go onto the One Golf, the RNA website, and subscribe, you get access to the full video. And it's just great. It's got Tom Watson, who was a childhood hero of mine. It's got Jack Newton, who was a childhood mentor and hero of mine, showing their playoff at Carnoustie. Shows Eric with Tom Watson at maybe it was Portrush last year. That was just fantastic. So to talk to Eric, and it was really no problems. He made it so comfortable, so easy. I was once again nervous as hell. We had a mess up with the Zoom. You and I got onto Zoom this morning. It was no problems. I sent him two Zoom invitations. He was sitting on one. I was sitting on the other. And then I realised that, and then I had this panic. And anyway, it was all worked out in the end.
No, mate, look, it was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed listening to it, as I have done. I think I've smashed out. I hadn't listened to yours for a number of weeks, and then I sort of smashed out, I think, about 6 in the last 5 days.
No, thank you.
It's been great listening. So, mate, well done on all of that, and getting those types of people is a big look. It's certainly a big deal, and so you should feel very proud, because I think it's great listening to. I do enjoy it. So well done.
Can I just talk about one other episode, because I was very happy to be able to interview Eric, and where do you go from there? Or I'll just keep going. But the latest episode, the interview with Mel, a chap by the name of Mel Hughes.
Mate, yes. Go on.
I don't want to spoil it for people who may want to listen when they do listen to this, but I really...
I have listened to it, and I'll let you talk,
If you're a golf nut, golf nerd, golf tragic, and just love a story about someone who you've never heard of, but you just listen to this, sit down with a cup of tea, a whiskey, a scotch, or whatever it is that your tipple is, sit back, and it's like reading a magazine that you don't want to stop turning the pages of, because he just starts talking about his life, his early part of his life in terms of where he was from, who he got taught golf by, who he got to sit alongside on the range when he got taught golf by Bob Toski, who's a legend of golf coaching in America, and then just some of the other experiences. So we're talking about a person that flew a plane before he could drive a car, got taught by Bob Toski, and got to meet Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and share the range with them and do all that sort of thing. Was a personal aide and assistant to Bobby Jones. Played Augusta more times than he can remember. Launched rockets to outer space. Flew aircraft for Top Gun. You can't stop listening. It was just amazing to be able to get access to Mel, and I thank my friend John Cornish for that. But I could listen to that several times.
Mate, it was incredibly captivating to listen to, and for anyone who's listening to my podcast, and if you haven't listened to the My Love of Golf, honestly, go and hunt down the Mel Hughes interview, and it's over 2 parts, but it is compelling. And if it was a book without being prefaced by "this is real life," you honestly think that no one could roll that into one life. It's quite incredible, and you throw in things like rocket scientist and all these things. I mean, these are terms that I joke about with people, and it's not rocket science. Who do you think you are? You're a rocket scientist. But exactly, Top Gun, all this sort of stuff. I won't spoil it for anyone else who hasn't listened to it. I can only say go and do yourself a favour and hunt it down, because it's compelling, captivating, entertaining, incredible, mesmerising, all the above, mate. And well done again for that one, because like you said, where do you go from Eric Anders Lang? You get this unknown name, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but unknown person, unknown name to certainly us in Australia, and I couldn't stop. I just want to go back and listen to it again.
Mate, and to combine the fact that he's played 2 or 3, top 100 lists, he's played at every decent golf course in the world that you could ever dream of 2 times over, and he's an awesome photographer as well. But the thing is, you ask, where do you go from Eric? And it's a question that someone's asked me else, and I've asked myself. You know what? It doesn't matter. I don't. Yeah. I'm not doing it for how many downloads and all of that sort of thing. I just do it to be able to share have a conversation with people who love golf. And, you know, if that's Mel, if that's, you know, my neighbour up the road who's a principal at a school teaching kids and they've got a golf program, I'll do that. Keep finding people who want to talk and share golf stories, and, you know, as long as I can add some value to the people who are listening, that's the main motivation, mate.
No, very good, mate, and yeah, compelling, and well done again on another one. They're always, and like you said, it doesn't matter who they are. They're great to listen to, great stories, and people who have got stories to tell, which is awesome.
I appreciate.
I'll ask you a couple of things. We'll break away a little bit from the podcast for a couple more questions to finish off. But you're a member of PK. I'm a huge fan of the redevelopment of Peninsula Kingswood. Anyone who doesn't know it, if you haven't seen me banging on about it, and I don't even live in Melbourne, you know, you've been living under a rock, because it's quite incredible to see it, let alone go and play it. What a wonderful home club for you. I've got to be honest. You've got to be pretty happy with that, of course, every day. But I love that, you know, you do get around and travel a bit. You play other courses. You're a well-experienced sort of golfer in terms of understanding what a course is made up of, and what's good to make up a good golf course, what to look at, what to play for, all that sort of stuff. If you could name any golf course in Australia, because I'm big on Australian courses, if you could name another golf course in Australia that you would be happy and love to call your second golf home, out of your experience where you play, what would that be? Name it.
Yes. Okay, I can do that, and that's pretty easy because I'm going to play it today. Seriously. I'm unashamedly biased towards golf in the Sandbelt. Being now a Victorian, I know that's, you know, there's a New South Welshman, Stevie. I know I've defected. But
we won't talk about the Mexicans, so that's okay. But yeah,
I probably have been living in Victoria longer than I lived in New South Wales. So let's say I'm a Victorian. I'm pretty passionate about Sandbelt golf, and I'm lucky enough to be a member at PK, as you mentioned. But there is another course that's on the Mornington Peninsula that I love, and it's just something about the layout, the design, the landscape, the topography, where it is, the style of course, and it's St Andrews Beach. I just, you know, I love St Andrews Beach. I'm a fan of Tom Doak. Most of Tom Doak's work that I've experienced, and that's maybe a handful of courses.
Yep.
I like his strategy. I like the way he's fair off the tee, but challenging into the green environment. And I've had a couple of, as I said, experiences with his courses in Australia and overseas. But I just love St Andrews Beach, and I love what it's become from a bad story, you know, like a bad start.
Yeah.
It was one of those new courses with a big model and sold expensive memberships, and it went bust. And I don't know how many owners it's had, but it's now got an owner which just keeps it pretty much as a public pay-to-play golf course.
Yeah,
little clubhouse, you know, it's almost like a temporary demountable building. Pay your green fees, get your cart or walk. It's too far to walk mainly, but that's the only one thing about it, that sometimes it's a long, long, long walk. But I just love playing that course. And if you said you can only go down the road and play there, I'd be very, very happy. Very happy.
Mate, I'm actually, I didn't know what you were going to pick, to be honest. I didn't know where in the country you were going to say. And when I went to Melbourne, what was now, I think it was about a couple of years ago, and I caught up with one of my followers, incidentally, sort of said, you know, if you're coming to Melbourne, let's go and have a bash. And we ended up going to SAB, St Andrews Beach, and it's just a wonderland. It's such an it's like walking into Luna Park, and everywhere you turn is fun. That's how I view St Andrews Beach. And it's not, again, everyone views courses differently. It's a taste, a personal taste thing, and I get that. But when I played St Andrews Beach, mate, it's just, like you said, the way that Tom Doak has sort of done his design, his routing, the way he's used the movement in the land, the way that holes traverse those dunes and the rolling hills, and it is wildly entertaining. I absolutely love it. And interesting pick, but a great pick. I'm really impressed that you did pick that one.
Well, you know, the easy pick would have gone to, you know, maybe pick Royal Melbourne or one of the other trophy courses. You know, it would only be outside of Peninsula Kingswood. Royal Melbourne is my other favourite by head and shoulders. You know, PK and Royal Melbourne head and shoulders above everything else. I love the national properties. I love what they're doing and all of that sort of thing. But you know, the reason for St Andrews Beach is I love sandbelt golf, but the other thing that is my passion is links golf. Take me to Scotland and put me over there and play golf, as I said at the start, whether it's a flat links or a dunes-oriented links. Love that. The northwest coast of Ireland, you had Nick on the podcast last week, and, Nick and I have connected, and we could talk about the northwest coast of Ireland, Donegal golf, all down through that west coast. I just, that's escapism for me. I don't care if I'm with people or with myself, and I played a lot of times over there by myself, and, that's like, I don't know what taking drugs is all about, but if you do get to escape when you do that sort of thing, that's my drug, and I just escape when I'm at a place like that. And St Andrews Beach to me, and I need to get to Barnbougle in fairness, but in terms of access, St Andrews Beach gives me that type of feeling.
Yeah, cool. No, good choice, mate. Very cool, very cool. And a question I'm intrigued in, because I do love your balanced opinion and your experience. So I think you've got a lot to give in sort of expert opinion in my view. And being in retail and the way that you are and through your experiences, you get to see lots of different types of people from the sport, and you see lots of different types of people coming into the sport, as you touched on earlier. And something that I think we always talk about in golf, but maybe the sport as a whole, or maybe those that govern the sport in Australia, don't know, maybe could do things better. But what do you think that golf as a sport could do better? From what because you're at the front line of people saying, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or this is what I love, and I'm glad, but this has been my hurdle. What do you think is probably something pertinent right now to golf in Australia? Because everyone talks about a decline and that it's struggling to be relevant in space and time usage and all that sort of thing. In your view, through what you've seen and what you've heard and what you've experienced, what do you think? It's a broad question, I get it, but what do you think is probably one of the things that the sport could do better right today?
Yeah, interesting. I'll start by answering the part of the answer in terms of, when I hear people say, oh, golf's in decline, right now, at this current time, golf is booming. And I see that through the people in the store, but I also get access to seeing some of the rounds being played and the numbers of people that are on golf courses at the moment.
Yes.
Because it's perceived as a sport that we can do safely. You can socially distance and do all of that relatively easily.
Yep.
The golf clubs can now follow the guidelines that are in place that all businesses that have people in them have to follow. So golf, you can get onto a golf course and just go and do it. Some of the other sports, are a little bit challenged in that space. So what's happened now is golf's booming. People, guys that I've never seen in the shop are wanting golf clubs because they want to go and play with their mates who are golfers. So golf's in a really good time at the moment to be able to capitalize on this growth, this spurt that it's had, and to harness that and to help it get to the next level, which is a more sustainable platform. So people do it more and more often. Now, I think to answer your question is, and I talked a little bit about this with Mike Orloff in a recent episode, who's an industry expert, and he had a great article around marketing golf to the millennials. Now, there's all the old guys like me and the guys older than me that are traditional golfers, but it's this millennial demographic and the younger people that we really need to focus on. So we really need to create pathways and environments that young people can come into golf, feel like they're having a entertaining experience, and then create an environment where they can want to stay and be a part of. And sometimes I think clubs get in the way of that. They're quite rigid, a lot of rules, a lot of different ways of doing golf that have been traditional for a long time. Thankfully, since my day, one of the key things that's moved on is I don't have to wear long socks anymore. And now in a revelation at Peninsula Kingswood, we can actually wear black short socks with black shoes, which was a new thing. But
wow,
that paints an example. And there are traditions, and I get that, and I respect every club's tradition.
Yep.
But I think we just need to have a look at what we're going to do for this younger group of people and how we make that pathway into being a golfer for a longer period of time, for a more sustainable period of time, a realistic opportunity. Because there is a hurdle where, you get to that 30s and 40s age group where there's parents and financial and all of those sorts of things that get in the way of golf sometimes because it can be expensive. So just these pathways, whether it's membership models, whether it's opportunities to play differently. Look at what bowls did 20 years ago. They had Friday night bowls with no shoes on. Now, find out what golf's version of bowls with no shoes on and allow people to come to clubs that they might not otherwise get access to.
Yeah.
Kingston Heath, for example, at the moment they've got a ladies membership pathway where you don't have to have the 4, 5 or 6 people recommending you. You don't have to pay your $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 entry fee. You just pay a reasonable fee, and the ladies get access to the golf course, and it's for a defined period of time. But then they can have the option to join. Now, they've got a whole load of ladies down there doing that at Kingston Heath on this access pathway. Now imagine if golf clubs took up strategies like that, created entry points for people to come into golf. And I just think that clubs that harness that attitude and have their own version of that will be the ones that will be successful in growing their membership base and creating back to what you and I talked about it yesterday. 71 juniors playing Sunday mornings at Cessnock Golf Club in the 80s. Those days are not there anymore, and the potential is for it to be there.
Yeah, it is, and I dare say those at the moment, as it stands in terms of juniors, those days are nearly long gone. From how many clubs I know that had serious numbers of juniors, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus, that were junior members of their club. But you're right, it's pathways. Very well said, mate. Good to hear your opinion on that, because I think that a lot of people with good opinions from within the industry of different sides of it, albeit, have opinions that I think the sport should start to listen to a little bit more. And you touched on Mike Orloff, and I listened to your interview with Mike. I've spoken to Mike a few times over the last couple of years. Very, very good brain in terms of sort of marketing side of golf, and he does a lot of work with clubs and assisting them to work out how best to introduce new members, new people, new participants to the sport, that sort of thing. And I think clubs need to open their minds a little bit more to it, because they just need to get their heads. I'll say it straight up, because I know I've been part of in the past, and I've seen plenty of examples, and I know people in them where clubs, I'll say they do it very wrong, and they keep their doors closed. I think more clubs need to work out how to open their doors to different types of people, because people do change and habits change and all that sort of stuff, and the sport over generations and we can say over centuries in years gone by in other countries, where the sport evolves. As much as landscapes evolve, the sport itself has to evolve with civilizations and with social interactions with each other and our use of our time. So, mate, well said, and I think it's a great opinion.
I will say one other thing, two other things on that point. These things do exist in other parts of the world. You've got some great golf courses, use Scotland as an example, that have public access to great properties. Right now it's harder to get public access to some of the great properties in Australia. So, that's maybe as much of a tourism thing. It's maybe not a growth of the game, but people are travelling to these destinations to go and play these great courses. I think sometimes there's a few barriers to that here in Australia. But the other thing I think and I don't have the answer, and I'm not knowledge in the background of it all, but at an administrative level, all I hear and see is, the bodies of golf that are responsible for the development and the growth of the game, be it at state level and national level, are trying to integrate, but I don't think they're getting that integration right. Golf Australia, you've still got some state-based factions that are, breaking away from Golf Australia. And then you've got the PGA on another hand, and the PGA, looking after the professional game, Golf Australia, the amateur game. It's all golf. And, Andy Marr spoke on the Inside the Ropes podcast a couple of episodes ago with a group of guys, Mike Clayton, Hazy, a few others, and they talked about what the pathway could look like. And Andy's like a big proponent that the golf body should just be all one, and the professional game should work with Golf Australia. The Golf Australia host the Oz Open, and then the PGA host the PGA, and they're conflicting and fighting against each other. Now, if golf at a professional level is one of the draw cards, one of the reasons why you want to aspire to be a golfer, want to aspire to watch golf, want to aspire to go to golf. Those people need to work together and make a product, that's welcoming and inviting and easy to access. And, to hear stories like the PGA are telling pros not to sign to go to the Oz Open, and sign contracts not to play that tournament, that doesn't make sense to me. And as I say, I'm not an administrator and I can't buy into it at all. But when I hear that, I just think there's a barrier. Fix it.
Yeah.
Just get together and fix it. Easy to say for little old Roscoe, My Love of Golf podcaster sitting here once a week, churning out some dribble. But just fix it, guys. Get together and fix it. Andy Marr, he's like, I don't understand. And I'm fairly much in his camp, but easy for us to say.
Yeah, no, well, mate, and we're always going to talk about it. If it's a way of improving the game and even openly opinionated about those political, I'll say political, because more often than not, that's what it's based around, is political sort of sides and angles and opinions. So, we as a sport, anyone involved in it, it just needs to be for the solution, and not trying to retain factions of control and whatever it might be. I just think we need to move past a lot of that, just so we can keep improving.
Especially at the moment, mate. The interest in eyeballs on golf has never been greater with the amount of 100%. People grassroots. So now's the time to act. Anyway, that's absolutely,
mate. Absolutely. Well, look, Roscoe, thank you so much for the chat today. I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful getting to know the person of who you are behind the My Love of Golf podcast, your journey and your passion for the sport along the way, and some of your interactions with certain personalities as well, and your mentors through your life has brought you to who you are. I think it's really fascinating, really intriguing, and I've certainly enjoyed talking to you about it. I hope my listeners have enjoyed listening. It's been wonderful.
Well, I was a bit funny about talking for myself when at the start when you asked me, Steve, but I've actually enjoyed talking about myself, so maybe there's something in that. But I've never actually told anyone that story at that length and that detail for that breadth of time, so I appreciate very much the opportunity to do that. And, for the people that do listen, if they want to reach out to me, if they have any questions, if there's anything that I can do to help them, feel free. I'm sure that Steve will in the show notes will put my Instagram accounts for My Love of Golf and my personal one for ross.flanagan.golf. Feel free to reach out at any time. I'd love to see you listening to the podcast as well. That would be the biggest thank you if you could just listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely, mate. To anyone listening, it's the My Love of Golf podcast is where we can find you through the podcast world, and your Instagram handle. You've got My Love Podcast Instagram as well.
Yeah, there's My Love of Golf is the Instagram handle for the podcast where the promotional posts go out for that. So that's just My Love of Golf, or one word, at My Love of Golf. There's occasional Twitter there. There's YouTube, which is developmental. There's a website, which is developmental but growing, all myloveofgolf.com. And then my own sort of golfing journey, I guess you could say, is at ross.flanagan. That's FLANIGAN.golf, ross.flanagan.golf. And you'll see some pretty much pictures of Peninsula pretty much all the time.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's about it. maybe the occasional one from Scotland. That's it. Yeah.
Very, very good, mate. Well, to everyone listening, go and find Roscoe. Go and see some of his journey and things that he loves about the sport, and his podcasting and so on, and all that sort of stuff in his travels. And Roscoe, look, one last thing I'll ask you. Would you mind, I love your insights, I love your opinions, and certainly you get to see some of the different equipment and things along the way through your retail business. Would you mind popping back in every now and then if I give you a yell and we can talk about what's latest and greatest, and I'll pose you some questions in the industry?
Mate, if you want to talk about some products, right here in my hand, I have the latest Fujikura Power Surge shaft. I'm going to put that into play today.
Wow, that's cool.
It's not a standard shaft. It was loaned to me by Fujikura. They want me to have a little play of that. So if you want to hear about things like that and what makes a Fujikura shaft an $1,100 shaft alone, I'm happy to talk about as much as I'm able to tell everyone about products. I'm certainly not the authority across the world, but I know a bit about a bit, so I'm happy to, as you can tell, happy to have a chat about all of that sort of stuff. No problems.
Unreal. Would love to have you back sooner rather than later, Roscoe. Well, thank you so much, Ross, for your time. Really appreciate the journey and conversation, and look forward to catching up again soon. And anyone listening, go and find out a bit about Ross Flanagan from My Love of Golf as well.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it, mate. And great job in your podcast. And I've loved listening into the first few episodes. And, mate, keep it up. Just keep it up. Just keep going.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Excellent work, buddy.
Now, just as a footnote to that awesome interview with Ross Flanagan, you can find Ross Flanagan and the My Love of Golf podcast on all sorts of social medias on the net. We'll start off with Instagram. You can find the My Love of Golf podcast on Instagram at My Love of Golf. You can find it on Facebook at My Love of Golf. And you can also find it on YouTube, My Love of Golf. And if you're looking for Ross Flanagan and his adventures, his personal bits and pieces as he travels the world and plays golf around Australia, on Instagram at ross.flanagan.golf. And Flanagan is spelled Flanigan. And on Facebook, he is on Ross Flanagan Golf as well. So have a look out for all those areas. And of course, the one and only podcast is available on your favorite podcast app. Search for the My Love of Golf podcast and you'll find it everywhere. Do yourself a favor and go to the My Love of Golf podcast and download and listen to the Mel Hughes interview that Ross did with him. It was absolutely intriguing, entrancing. I couldn't put it down. I had to keep listening. I want to go back and listen to it again. It was that good. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't listened to it, but do yourself a favor. Mel Hughes' interview, you'll want to listen to one of Ross's recent ones. He also, as I mentioned to Ross in his interview that I did with him about his interview with Eric Anders Lang, which is fantastic. There's a whole heap of others, Andy Proudman and so on. Look, you're going to enjoy them if you love golf. And you get a kick out of listening to interviews with different types of people in the sport and in the industry as a whole, and what people are doing on the cutting edge of stuff with social media and different types of media and all sorts of different things. You will love all the people that Ross has interviewed. So go ahead and have a listen. I'll also make mention of Ross's retail store, Drum & Golf in Melbourne CBD. It's on Franklin Street, just near the Queen Victoria Market. So if you live in Melbourne, if you're around Melbourne, if you're travelling through there and you want to go to a retail shop, I've been to the store. I can give it a free plug because I reckon it's a ripper shop, and I reckon Ross and his staff do a wonderful job of looking after the customers there. And so look, I recommend if you're down there and you want to look at some gear, definitely have a look at the store in the Melbourne CBD on Franklin Street. So a bit of a free plug there to Ross's shop. But he'll look after you and his staff certainly will too. Thanks again to Ross, and hope you enjoyed the chat and hope you enjoyed the two parts that were episode 4. And I look forward to your company in a couple of weeks with episode 5. Thanks for joining me.